Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Overdrive Insider, where today we dive into one of the most fascinating icons of Japanese performance history, the 1993 Mazda RX-7 FD3S. This machine, with its sleek bodywork and revolutionary rotary engine, became more than just a car. It became a symbol of a bold era in automotive engineering and culture. Over the next few chapters of this story, we'll explore how Mazda chased perfection with a design unlike anything else on the road, why the FD3S captured the hearts of enthusiasts across the globe, and what its legacy means for both car culture and the future of rotary innovation. The RX-7 FD3S arrived at a time when the global performance car market was shifting. The early 1990s saw Japan producing some of the most technologically daring machines in the world, from turbocharged skylines to all-wheel drive rally monsters. Yet Mazda chose a different path. It doubled down on its signature rotary engine, an engineering marvel that spun faster and lighter than conventional piston designs. This decision wasn't just technical, it was emotional, a statement that Mazda would not follow the crowd, but instead carve its own destiny. The FD3S combined its compact 13B twin-turbo rotary with a chassis that emphasized balance, weight distribution, and minimalism. The result was a car that didn't just go fast in a straight line. It danced through corners with a precision that rivaled far more expensive European exotics. Enthusiasts quickly recognized that Mazda had created a driver's car of the highest order, one that delivered sensations few others could match. At the same time, whispers circulated about fragility, high maintenance demands, heat management issues, and a thirst for fuel that made ownership a serious commitment. But those very contradictions are what make the RX-7 FD3S so compelling to examine today. In this video, we're going to journey through three interconnected perspectives on the FD3S. We'll begin with the story of its daring creation and the culture that gave birth to it, moving through the technical brilliance and challenges that defined its character. Then we'll uncover the rise of its cult status, its appearances in motorsport and media, and the way it shaped an entire generation's perception of Japanese performance cars. Finally, we'll bring the narrative full circle, looking at its long-term legacy and what it continues to represent to car enthusiasts, collectors, and dreamers worldwide. By the time we reach the end, you'll see how the RX-7 FD3S was never just about horsepower or numbers on a spec sheet. It was about daring to be different, about chasing an almost impossible idea of perfection, and about leaving a mark that could never be erased. This is the story of a rotary legend, a car that redefined what driving passion could look like. Let's dive in. The early 1990s were an era of ambition for Japanese automakers. Mazda stood at a crossroads, facing the challenge of competing against giants while still maintaining its own identity. The FD3S RX-7 was not born from a simple desire to keep up with rivals. It was a calculated risk, a bold statement that the company's devotion to the rotary engine could deliver something extraordinary. At its core, the RX-7 was an expression of philosophy, lighter, sharper, more visceral than almost anything else in its class. Mazda's engineers weren't just building a car, they were sculpting a machine that would speak directly to the soul of driving. Micro story. The design of the FD3S began with a blank canvas. Mazda's engineers asked themselves what would happen if they centered every decision around weight reduction and balance. The answer was a body so sleek it cut through air like a knife, with a drag coefficient that made it one of the most aerodynamic shapes of its time. To match that, the rotary engine's compact size allowed it to sit low and rearward, giving the car near-perfect weight distribution. The result was more than numbers. It was a machine that felt alive in the driver's hands, delivering an immediacy that became its signature. Context digest. The rotary engine was unlike anything most people had ever experienced. Instead of pistons pumping up and down, it used triangular rotors spinning inside an oval housing. This meant smoother power delivery and an ability to rev to thrilling heights, but it also demanded precision in cooling and maintenance. While competitors like Nissan and Toyota leaned into traditional turbocharged inline sixes, Mazda doubled down on this unconventional technology, knowing it would set them apart, but also accepting the risks of fragility. Micro story. Early marketing for the RX-7 positioned it as a car for purists. Instead of emphasizing straight-line speed, Mazda showcased its ability to handle tight curves and winding roads. Enthusiasts were quick to notice. Journalists praised its responsiveness, and owners reported that it felt more connected than cars costing twice as much. But beneath that praise lingered questions. Would the complexity of a sequential twin-turbo system, where one turbo handled low revs before handing off to a second at higher speeds, be reliable in real-world conditions? Mazda assured the world it was, but time would tell. Reflection. Bridge. Engineering brilliance often walks hand-in-hand with engineering compromise. That tension would define much of the FD3S's reputation as both a marvel and a challenge. Micro-story. In Japan, the RX-7 found itself among legends. The Skyline GTR, the Toyota Supra, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT. Each had its strengths, but the RX-7 was always the lithe fighter in the ring. While others relied on brute power or heavy technology, Mazda leaned into lightness and balance. This gave it a distinct personality, one that stood out in the famous Tuge mountain passes, and on racetracks where agility mattered more than raw numbers. Owners became evangelists, insisting the RX-7 wasn't just fast, it was an experience. Context digest. To understand the cultural climate, we need to look at Japan's bubble economy collapse. The early 1990s marked a downturn, yet car makers had already invested heavily in ambitious performance projects. Mazda's RX-7 emerged at this strange intersection of economic struggle and engineering daring. On one hand, budgets were tightening. On the other, the desire to showcase technological pride was stronger than ever. The RX-7's development represented Mazda's belief that even in tough times, boldness mattered more than safety. Micro-story. In motorsport, the FD3S quickly made its presence known. It carved a place in touring car racing and became a familiar sight at grassroots events. Its rotary engine, while sometimes unpredictable, delivered thrilling performance that captured fans' imaginations. Many enthusiasts recall seeing brightly colored RX-7s tearing through corners in Japanese touring car championships, leaving impressions that would echo for decades. These victories reinforced the image of the FD3S not just as a street car, but as a competitor. Reflection bridge. Every triumph on the track added to its mystique, but every mechanical failure added fuel to the debate about its long-term viability. Context digest. The sequential twin-turbo system deserves special mention. It provided smooth power delivery by engaging one turbo at low RPMs and another at high speeds, a setup ahead of its time. Yet it was also complex, relying on a network of vacuum lines, actuators, and valves. When new, it worked brilliantly. As the cars aged, however, owners discovered how temperamental it could be. This duality, the brilliance of innovation against the fragility of execution, would come to define the RX-7's reputation among enthusiasts and mechanics alike. Micro-story. For many, owning an FD3S was a rite of passage. The joy of why. Hitting redline on a rotary, feeling the chassis rotate around your body, was intoxicating. But so were the bills. Apex seals, turbo issues, and fuel consumption all piled up. Some owners lovingly kept them alive. Others sold them in frustration. Yet strangely, the car's flaws only added to its cult appeal. It wasn't for everyone, and that exclusivity made it feel like a secret club. Micro-story. The RX-7 also reflected Mazda's broader ambitions. The company was determined not to fade into the background of the automotive world. Through the FD3S, Mazda sent a clear message. They were capable of creating a world-class performance car on their own terms. It wasn't just a sports car. It was a declaration of independence, an insistence that Mazda would always be more than a footnote in the industry. The FD3S's story was never just about the car itself. It was about the environment that shaped it, the risks Mazda took, and the people who embraced it despite its quirks. As we move forward, we'll see how these qualities didn't just define the RX-7's identity in its time, but also set the stage for how it would become a cultural, phenomenon far beyond the showroom floor. As the RX-7 FD3S entered the broader stage outside Japan, it began to transform from a daring engineering gamble into a cultural touchstone. American enthusiasts saw it as an exotic alternative to the muscle cars and European imports that dominated their roads. Its lightweight chassis, twin-turbo punch, and stunning looks made it a darling of car magazines and track daydreamers alike. Yet the FD3S was never destined to be a mainstream hit. Instead, it thrived as a symbol for those who wanted something different, something that felt alive. Micro story. In the United States, the RX-7 found a unique niche. While its price positioned it alongside Corvettes and 911s, its personality was completely different. Buyers drawn to it often weren't chasing prestige, they were seeking purity. On twisty roads and autocross circuits, the RX-7 embarrassed heavier competitors, its agility proving what Japanese engineering could accomplish. But dealerships also began seeing frustrated owners returning with reliability complaints, sparking a divide between devoted believers and cautious skeptics. Context digest. The 1990s American market was in transition. Emissions regulations were tightening, insurance premiums were climbing, and the age of the muscle car was giving way to a more globalized idea of performance. Into this landscape walked the RX-7, a car that refused to compromise its design to meet every market expectation. It was uncompromising brilliance in some areas, stubborn in others, and that made it both a cult hero and a difficult sell. Micro story. Motorsport again played a key role in elevating its image. The RX-7 became a star in IMSA competition, where its rotary heart screamed at high revs against much larger-engined rivals. It didn't always win, but when it did, it proved that displacement wasn't destiny. Fans began associating the RX-7 with underdog determination, a car that could punch far above its weight if given the chance. These images cemented its reputation as more than just a pretty street car. Reflection bridge. Racing glory fueled dreams, but popular culture would soon take the RX-7 to places no engineer at Mazda could have predicted. Micro story. As video games like Gran Turismo arrived in living rooms, the FD3S became a digital icon. Players who had never sat behind a wheel of a real RX-7 suddenly discovered its handling, its rev-happy engine, and its sleek lines. For many young enthusiasts, this was their first encounter with the rotary legend, and it sparked real-world desire. Suddenly, the RX-7 wasn't just a car, it was a virtual hero that bridged fantasy and reality. Context digest. The influence of media in the late 1990s and early 2000s cannot be overstated. Movies, anime, and games pushed the RX-7 into the spotlight again and again. It wasn't always portrayed as the strongest car, but it was always portrayed as unique, fast, stylish, different. This mattered deeply to a generation growing up in a world where standing out was currency. The RX-7 offered an identity, not just transportation. Micro story. In the tuning scene, the FD3S achieved near-mythical status. Its lightweight frame made it perfect for modification. Owners swapped turbos, rebuilt rotaries, and sometimes even abandoned the rotary entirely for V8s, sparking endless debates. Purists cried foul, but others argued that the RX-7's spirit was about pushing limits, not preserving tradition. Car meets and magazines were filled with brightly painted RX-7s, each reflecting the creativity of its owner. It wasn't just a car, it was a canvas. Reflection bridge. With each cultural appearance and every enthusiast build, the RX-7 evolved from a risky showroom experiment into a symbol of individuality and rebellion. Micro story. But fame came with a cost. As the RX-7 gained attention, law enforcement and insurance companies began to associate it with reckless behavior, even when many owners simply loved it as a weekend car. Stories spread about blown engines, totaled examples, and young drivers in over their heads. This gave the RX-7 a reputation that was both alluring and intimidating, further dividing opinion. For every fan who dreamed of owning one, another dismissed it as too fragile, too dangerous, or too demanding. Context digest. Emissions regulations in the United States also clipped the wings of the FD3S. The rotary engine struggled to meet increasingly strict standards, and Mazda faced costly hurdles to keep it compliant. Eventually, the RX-7 disappeared from American showrooms, leaving enthusiasts with a bittersweet memory. A car they loved, but one they knew was doomed by forces larger than itself. Its absence only fueled its myth. Micro story. In Japan, meanwhile, the FD3S had a second life through street culture. While we won't glorify illegal activity, it's impossible to ignore how the car became associated with high speed, runs, and legendary names in underground scenes. For many, the RX-7 symbolized freedom on the open road, a lightweight rocket that asked its drivers to prove themselves. These stories, retold endlessly in magazines and later online forums, magnified the RX-7's aura across oceans. Micro story. Collectors began to notice something too. As RX-7s grew rarer on the road, their prices began to stabilize and eventually rise. What had once been an affordable sports car was quietly transforming into a sought-after collectible. Low-mileage examples started disappearing into private garages, while rougher ones became the foundation for ambitious tuning projects. This dual fate reflected the car's paradoxical nature: treasured artifact and restless experiment, frozen in time yet constantly reinvented. The RX-7's rise in culture showed that it was more than metal and rubber. It was an idea, one that spread across continents and generations. That idea, however, would not end with popularity. It would deepen into legacy as the car's story carried forward into the modern era, shaping how enthusiasts and automakers alike think about passion, risk, and innovation. As years passed and the FD3S faded from new car lots, it began to take on a new identity. No longer just a performance car of the 1990s, but a lasting symbol of Mazda's boldest gamble. The RX-7's absence from the market did not weaken its presence. Instead, it amplified its mystique. Enthusiasts who missed their chance to own one now looked back with longing, while younger fans discovered it through stories, media, and the occasional glimpse of a pristine example at a car meet. This transition from contemporary competitor to timeless icon gave the FD3S a second life, one rooted in legacy. Micro story. One of the most fascinating shifts in the RX-7 story is how its flaws became part of its myth. Owners who kept them alive through endless rebuilds and maintenance began to wear those struggles as badges of honor. The term rotary loyalty became common in enthusiast circles, describing people who refused to give up on an engine most others found impractical. This loyalty became less about performance numbers and more about identity. Owning an FD3S meant being part of a tribe that embraced difficulty for the sake of passion. Context digest. By the mid-2000s, the RX-7's value as a collectible began to climb steadily. Limited production numbers, combined with attrition from accidents and mechanical failures, made surviving examples rarer each year. Auctions highlighted pristine, unmodified cars as treasures, while modified ones continued to dominate shows and track days. This split underscored the FD3S's dual role: classic collector's piece and forever tuner's playground. Micro story. The car's global influence also grew stronger. In Europe, where emissions regulations had once limited its reach, enthusiasts began importing Japanese examples, treating them as exotic treasures. In the United States, import laws created anticipation for the fabled 25-year rule, sparking countdowns until newer Japanese models could legally arrive. Across continents, the RX-7 was no longer just a car from the past. It was a goal, a dream worth waiting and saving for. Reflection bridge. As its legend expanded, the RX-7 stopped being only about what Mazda had built and started becoming about what it inspired others to imagine. Micro story. The FD3S's role in shaping modern car culture is undeniable. It influenced not only what enthusiasts looked for in a sports car, but also how they valued lightness, balance, and individuality over raw numbers. Many credit the RX-7 with fueling the golden age of Japanese imports in America, which in turn shifted an entire generation of enthusiasts away from heavy muscle cars and toward agile, high-revving machines. Without it, the cultural landscape of performance might look very different today. Context digest. Mazda itself has never forgotten the RX-7's importance. Though the rotary engine disappeared from production cars after the RX-8, the company has repeatedly teased its return in concept vehicles, often sparking waves of speculation. Each new rotary rumor reignites the same discussion. Could Mazda recapture the magic of the FD3S, or was that era truly unrepeatable? The absence of a successor has only deepened the RX-7's legendary status. Micro-story. For owners today, the RX-7 is a balancing act between joy and preservation. Driving one delivers sensations few modern cars can replicate: the lightness, the revs, the connection. But it also means accepting the costs and risks of maintaining a fragile, aging machine. Many owners describe the experience as a relationship, rewarding but demanding, intoxicating yet unpredictable. In that way, the RX-7 mirrors life itself, fleeting, challenging, and unforgettable. Reflection Bridge, the RX-7's story, reminds us that perfection often comes not from practicality, but from daring to reach for something beyond reason. Micro-story. Younger enthusiasts raised on digital impressions continue to chase the dream. Some discover RX-7s through drifting culture, where the chassis's balance makes it an enduring favorite. Others find them in collector circles, where values continue to climb. In both cases, the car bridges generations, offering something timeless, in an industry that often feels disposable. Context digest. The FD3S's legacy also highlights a broader truth in automotive history, that risk-taking defines greatness. Mazda didn't build the RX-7 FD3S to please accountants or regulators. It built it to pursue an ideal. That pursuit didn't always succeed in the traditional sense. Sales were modest, and reliability issues were real. But the car's long-lasting influence proves that success can be measured in passion, not profit. Micro-story. Today, when an FD3S rolls onto a street or track, it turns heads in a way few cars can. Its proportions still look modern, its sound is unmistakable, and its aura radiates authenticity. Younger fans treat it like rolling art, while older fans see it as a time capsule of an era when Japanese performance dared to challenge the world. In both cases, the RX-7's impact remains alive, refusing to fade even decades after production stopped. The story of the RX-7 FD3S is not simply about a car. It is about ambition, risk, and the willingness to chase perfection despite the odds. Its flaws became part of its legend, its victories fueled dreams, and its disappearance only made it stronger. As we close this journey, we see that the RX-7 was never just a rotary-powered sports car. It was a symbol of what happens when passion drives engineering, and when a company dares to create something truly unforgettable. Its legacy remains, echoing every time a rotary engine spins to life, reminding the world that some risks are worth taking. The Mazda RX-7 FD3S stands as proof that cars can be more than transportation. They can be stories, symbols, and movements. We began with its creation, forged in an era when Mazda dared to double down on the rotary engine despite doubts and risks. We followed its rise into the spotlight, where it won fans through motorsport, media, and the tuning scene, becoming more than just a machine. It became an idea. And we traced its evolution into a lasting icon, one that continues to shape culture and inspire enthusiasts long after production ended. What makes the FD3S unforgettable is not just its beauty or its speed, but its contradictions. It was light yet fragile, accessible yet demanding, praised yet criticized. Those tensions made it a car that chose its drivers as much as they chose it. That mutual commitment created loyalty, a bond that turned struggles into pride and flaws into legends. Today, whether admired at a car meet, raced on a track, preserved in a collection, or immortalized in digital form, the RX-7 FD3S continues to live on as a rotary heartbeat in automotive memory. It reminds us that greatness doesn't always come from being the most powerful or the most practical. Sometimes it comes from daring to be different, from pushing boundaries, and from leaving an emotional mark that numbers alone can't explain. For enthusiasts, the RX-7 is more than nostalgia. It's a reminder of why we fall in love with cars in the first place. It embodies the thrill of risk, the joy of connection, and the timeless appeal of chasing perfection, even when perfection is fleeting. So as we close this story, take one last look at the FD3S and remember what it represents: courage, creativity, and the passion to build something truly unique. Thanks for riding with us on Overdrive Insider. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.